for the longest time, I think girls were misled in thinking that, okay, I'm Barbie. I get the car, I get the house, I get the guy, I get the clothes, I get the wardrobe, I get all the stuff, I get the little dog, I get the whole thing. And it's okay to just be a woman.
Yeah.
And have dignity in that and what I'm created to be.
People do ask me, do you ever get tired? Like, do you ever run out of things to talk about? Yeah. And the fact is, no, I run out of time.
What do you mean when you say toxic empathy?
The empathy is just a feeling. It can't tell you what's right or wrong or true or false, but the truth in love can. It blinds people to morality and reality in the name of what I would call fake kindness or fake niceness.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Chad Prather Show. You know what to do. Go to where the podcasts are offered. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. I don't care what you say. Just say something, okay? That's kind of starting to bite me a little bit because you guys are just starting to get a little big for your britches in some of the things you're saying. But hey, I like it. It helps drive us up the charts and it makes us relevant. Pure vanity, I'm telling you, but we need it. So stroke my ego. Go over there and do that. Drop me a line, chad@thechadprathershow.com, and we'll read it. And you know what? Listen, you guys are what makes this show happen, and it's all because of you. The only reason I talk is just for you folks. Honestly, I think I talk in my sleep. But thank you guys for your support, and we've had some great conversations lately, and I hope you've been enjoying them, sharing them with your family and friends, because that's what helps us so much. I want to ask this person some questions. You guys have all watched her show. You're familiar with her. You have to be hiding under a rock if you don't know Allie Beth Stuckey. How are you?
Good. How are you? That was an amazing intro.
You know, just pull my string at this point. Just zing it. I want to ask you this before we get into all the stuff. So, Allie, you and I've known you for a number of years now. I mean, if you think back, it's been a minute.
Yeah. I think I knew you and started following you when you were just putting out like your first awesome videos from your truck, which I know you still do, but from the very beginning when you first started that, I was following you.
Well, if times get any more lean, I may be back to just doing that.
Hey, whatever works.
It does work. You obviously have the wildly successful podcast, Relatable, and you've had a lot of different things that come out. You got a new book coming out called Toxic Empathy, and I'm anxious to talk about that. It's going to be out October 15th. I'm going to get into what toxic empathy is all about and see if I have any of it.
Mm-hmm. You do. I can tell.
I know.
You're all about it.
It's my aura.
Yes. Actually, when toxic empathy is in the dictionary, you with your cowboy hat, right there, next to it.
You know, I don't know if I've ever told you the story about the time I accidentally went to a Me Too rally in Grand Junction, Colorado.
How have I not heard this?
Well, I had done a show out there, and the next morning I was having breakfast, and our crew walked out, and we were in a parade.
Okay.
We didn't know, but we discovered very fast we were toxic.
Okay.
We were not welcome there, as, again, my aura walked into that. So it made for some funny content with that.
I'm sure it did.
I had no idea what it was all about.
Did you leave wearing the pink hat?
No, but I was fascinated at the men who were.
Yeah.
And the costumes they were wearing.
Yeah.
And the irony of walking a dachshund, a wiener dog dressed up the way they had.
Right.
You know, it was wild. Mm-hmm. You, so a little bit of your history. You can tell me to stay out of as much of this as you want, but you were at the Blaze way back.
Yes.
And then you weren't at the Blaze. Then you wound up back at the Blaze.
Yes.
It's a weird little journey for you.
Yeah. So I started speaking to sorority students. So after I graduated from college in 2014, I went into PR and social media, moved to Athens, Georgia. That's where I ended up meeting my husband, getting married. And so I was working in PR, but I love to talk, as we were just discussing. I've always loved public speaking. I actually gave the commencement address at my graduation, not because I was valedictorian, but because I had written this speech and through a process got selected. And I knew in that moment, as I was giving that speech, I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But I had no idea what that looked like. So as I was working full time, I just had this idea. I told my husband, I said, you know, it's election season. It's 2015. And all of these Christian conservative women were around me that were about my age. And I realized that none of them were interested in the election at all. Yeah. They didn't know what was at stake. In fact, I was leading a Bible study at the time of freshman girls. So I was a year out of college. They were freshmen. And they were smart girls and probably the most biblically literate of the group. As we were talking about the election, she mentioned that she loved Bernie Sanders. And I thought, oh, no. we've got a problem here. What is going on? And as I was engaging with her, I realized that as smart as she was, genuinely, she really hadn't thought about abortion, the border, all of these other issues from a biblical perspective. Mm-hmm. She was duped by what I call this toxic empathy into thinking that we as Christians are actually called to delegate our compassion to the government. And I said, I want to talk to as many young women about this stuff as I can. So I started at the sororities, and then I got connected to the Blaze. Like, I just started writing a blog, and this was 2016, started putting videos on Facebook, kind of like you did, and was just doing it on my own, even while, working full time. But through a series of connections in God's providence, I got connected to Dana Lash's producer, and he just said that he would give me a tour of the Blaze. And I wasn't thinking that I would ever get hired. Yes.
That's where it starts.
Because I asked, I was like, can I just see the facilities where Glenn Beck works? And so I took a tour of the Blaze, and then one of the producers saw me and was like, I think I've seen your videos on Facebook. Do you want to come do Facebook Lives here? And that's when it started. That was beginning of 2017. I was at the Blaze for a little bit, went to CRTV. Yeah. And that's where I started Relatable in 2018. Then CRTV and the Blaze merged.
Yep, I was there for that.
I wasn't sure how I felt about that at first.
I was not happy.
Yeah, and because there were a lot of different reasons and a lot of questions. We just didn't know. But then it ended up working out, and Relatable has continued to grow, and I've continued to speak and write books, and that's where I am now.
Hey guys, let's take a break in the show real quick. I want to tell you about my friends over at United Patriot Supply. I'm a gun guy. I love my firearms. I love stockpiling my ammunition. I've got all the stuff out there, but sometimes you run into some things that are a little bit hard to find. That's when I turn to my good buddies over at UnitedPatriotSupply.com. They're not only my friends, they're partners with this show, and I'm proud to know them because they deliver. And let me tell you, when I say they deliver, if there's stuff out there you're looking for and you're having a hard time finding it, I guarantee you there's a very good chance they're going to have what you're looking for. So go out there and check them out, UnitedPatriotSupply.com. Right now, they got a deal going. When you buy a firearm, you can get up to 5 ounces of free silver with every order. So they got a silver incentive program because United Patriot Supply, they're also United Patriot Coin, and you've heard us talk about them as well. So you buy a firearm, you get silver with it. You get a free ounce of silver for every $500 you spend on guns. That's up to 5 free ounces. So you buy a $2,500 gun, guess what? You're going to get 5 pieces of silver. That's a pretty cool deal. So check it out. It's a combined promotion between United Patriot Supply and United Patriot Coin. And just get over there and get to know those guys. I tell you, you're going to love them, and they're going to be a regular stop and shop for you. So head over to UnitedPatriotSupply.com.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, Glenn doesn't own the Blaze. He did, but he owns the building where the Blaze is. He's an owner. I don't know how that all works out, but CRTV came in and they merged and bought out. I didn't know at the time if it was going to be Daily Wire or who it was going to be or what it was going to be, but they wound up doing that whole thing, and I was like, I had signed with CRTV after pushing back for like 7 months with them, and then I signed it, and then the president of the network, Gaston Mooney, called me on the phone. I was at Walmart, and I remember that because I never go to Walmart.
I remember where I was sitting too.
And he called me on the phone like 2 days after I signed the thing, and he's like, we're the Blaze now. And I was like, bro, this is information that could have been handy a long time ago.
Right.
That I didn't know you guys were even into that.
Right.
And at the time, there were different little issues that were there. It's water under the bridge. But I was like, I didn't know how I felt about that.
Yeah.
And I knew you had been a part of CRTV. Then I was like, well, she had been with the Blaze. I didn't know how you felt about that, but I was like, it's got to be questionable.
Of course, there were just a lot of questions. Yeah. A lot of questions, and didn't know how it would look, but it's ended up working out. I really love the leadership at the Blaze. And the questions have ended up being answered, but the conservative media world is so small, and the circles just keep getting smaller, and so it's just so important for us to continue the alliances that we have.
I agree that, everybody from the outside looking in, they think that there's all this headbutting and stuff. When I left the Blaze last year, I didn't really leave. I'm still a contributor with the Blaze. Yeah. I'm still in a great relationship. They're still family to me.
Yeah. And you were just there the other day. We were looking at the robot dog together, and you were, talking to Tyler, so it's not like left on bad terms.
The cool thing about when I left is is unlike a lot of times when people leave an organization, they leave under bad circumstances. I didn't. We're still friends and family.
Yeah.
We talk all the time. And yes, what she's alluding to is Glenn Beck apparently has decided that he doesn't want real dogs on his ranch. He wants robot dogs.
I didn't know that was Glenn's.
That's Glenn's.
I didn't know whose it was.
He wants a team of robot dogs that can go out and walk his property.
That's not the worst idea. It's kind of
at least he
scary,
can
though.
see.
Yeah.
It's a little weird. I was like, let's shoot that
His
with a
ranch might
shotgun.
look like Westworld. That's what I'm thinking.
And knowing Glenn the way we do, people send me messages. Just yesterday, somebody sent me a message about Glenn with some relief efforts in regards to Mercury 1 and Hurricane Helene. They know I'm doing some things there.
Yeah.
And they said, can you talk to Glenn? And I was like, let me stop you right there. Glenn doesn't live on the same planet we live on. He's a different cat. Like, does his thing. So you don't just say, hey, let me just talk to Glenn. A lot of people don't understand that. Great guy, but different cat. Different cat. She didn't say that. I said that. I love Glenn. I can say it. And he's wasting
Well, he's
away.
just on another level when it comes to creativity and how he's thinking about the future and how he's planning for things. Whenever I talk to Glenn, I just kind of sit there and take it in. And I'm like scared to ask a question because I'm like, what are you about to tell me is going to happen? Because I don't think I want to know. I'm scared to know what you know.
I know. Same. And he knows some things. And I asked Glenn a long time ago, I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago, I asked him, I said, Glenn, at what point in time did you decide you were tired of talking? And he said, I think about 1986.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done a lot of talk. He's done a lot of talking. He's not going to quit. Have you gotten to a point yet, and we'll get into toxic empathy here in a second, have you gotten to a point yet where you're like, oh, I don't want to say another word?
No.
No, you just keep talking?
No, I joked when I got up on stage. I did this event this weekend. It was our first ever event. It was called Share the Arrows.
It was awesome. From what I saw, and I'm a man, and I saw these hundreds or if thousands, I don't know.
Yeah, it was
ladies.
It was 4,000 women.
Wow.
So it was amazing. We announced it in May, and 4,000 women showed up from all over the country and Canada. And as I stood on stage, I joked. My first thing was like, I just created this event so I would have one more outlet to talk because it's not enough. People do ask me, do you ever get tired? Like, do you ever run out of things to talk about? Yeah. And the fact is, no, I run out of time. I'm sure you feel the same way sometimes. There's so much to talk about. I never have time to talk about all the things that are there to discuss.
Yeah. I don't know if I have people, I do so many different things that people say, well, if you could eliminate one thing, what would it be? It wouldn't be this.
Yeah.
Like, this is therapy for me.
Yeah. What would it be?
This.
Do you have an answer?
At my age, I wouldn't have a problem coming off of the road doing live entertainment as much as I do.
Yeah. That just takes it out of you,
it's
man.
Exhausting.
I don't even do that, but even just having one event, I now look at what you do or what people who host a bunch of events throughout the year, that took so much effort, even just the day of, but also the weeks leading up. That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's awesome. It's great, but it's a lot.
And I'll tell you, I love doing it when I'm there doing it.
Exactly.
But the job is getting there. And so your last book, You're Not Enough, and That's Okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Phenomenal book, by the way, and a phenomenal message. And now, toxic empathy.
Yeah.
What do you mean when you say toxic empathy?
Yes. So the full title is Toxic Empathy, How Progressives Exploit Christian Compassion. Mm-hmm. And I realized that both the titles of my book have kind of been jarring titles, and I haven't really meant for them to be, but I guess at the same time I kind of have, because for most women, when they hear You're Not Enough, they bristle and they think, what are you talking about? I've been told my whole life that I'm beautiful and perfect the way I am. But in that book is packaged really good news that we are insufficient, we're sinful, and that Christ is enough for us, and that actually relieves us of a huge burden of being our own God. And so it's the same kind of thing here, that when you hear toxic empathy, well, we've been told for years, especially since 2020, that the highest virtue, the best we can be, is empathetic. It's the highest form of morality. So when you hear someone say, especially a Christian, say that it's toxic, that sounds really harsh. But within it, I have good news that there's a better way. Empathy, I argue, is a really heavy burden to carry. It can be good or it can be bad. If I feel how you feel, maybe I can feel your pain. That could either lead me to compassion. It could lead me to serve you in a way that you need. For example, if I see a struggling mom in the airport trying to juggle her kid and her suitcase, because I've been there, maybe that leads me to help her. Maybe it leads me to generosity. But say you have empathy for the man who believes that he's a woman. You feel how he feels. You feel his pain. Well, that empathy could blind you to the other people involved in that situation. It could blind you to biology, to reality. Right. And so if you're led by empathy when it comes to something like gender deception, it could lead you to making really bad and immoral decisions when it comes to the policy surrounding things like gender. So that's basically my argument, that empathy is used as a tool of emotional manipulation to get women to believe that the progressive side of an issue is the compassionate one.
Hey guys, I don't know if you noticed it or not, but we all have two ages. We got our true age and then we got our biological age. Our bio age suggests how healthy or unhealthy we are inside. You want your bio age years to be younger than your true age, and I want to tell you how Field of Greens is helping me do that. Field of Greens is an organic superfood fruit and vegetable drink, and it's unlike anything else you're going to find out there. It's serious nutrition. Listen, Field of Greens was approved for a university study that doctors believe may lower your body's biological age, and that generally means better health. Listen, each fruit and vegetable in Field of Greens was selected by doctors to support vital body functions like your heart, your liver, your kidneys, metabolism, your immune system. The important stuff. Only Field of Greens is backed by this better health promise. At your next physical or checkup, your doctor will notice your improved health or your money back. So join me in better health with 15% off and free shipping. Visit fieldofgreens.com. Use promo code CHAD. I spell it Chad. That's promo code Chad, fieldofgreens.com. Once again, fieldofgreens.com. So let me try some examples here. So last night, at the time of this taping, was the vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance sort of came out with his pro-life stance, and I could tell he was attempting empathy.
Yeah.
He was attempting empathy.
Yeah.
Of trying to say, hey, we got to get better at this messaging, and they've got to learn to trust Republicans again.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
What do you mean, trust Republicans?
For me, and I know for many others, I'm a one-issue person, and life is the one issue. Mm-hmm. When I was in college at the University of Georgia, I wrote for the Red and Black newspaper. I was consistently writing for life, and I was not very welcome.
Yeah.
With that perspective, in the early '90s at the University of Georgia, even then.
Yeah.
But it was a big issue for me. So I'm pretty staunch when I perk up when somebody brings that topic up, and I could tell he was trying to be empathetic, and I felt like as good as the debate performance was overall, I felt like he fell a little short with that. Am I wrong, or did you see that as well?
No, you're not wrong. He was definitely squishy on that answer.
Yeah.
And I understand that at least Republicans feel that it is a scary topic to approach because they believe what I think is a misrepresentation of the data that most of America is so staunchly pro-choice. I mean, this is really what animates the Democrats. You saw with both Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, this is when they got in their groove. Like, they got most excited, most articulate when they're talking about the slaughter of unborn children.
That's their issue.
That's their issue. That's what animates them, makes them passionate. It's really dark and demonic when you think about it like that. And while J.D. Vance did pivot in a way that I thought was good when he pointed out how radical they are in abortion and even afterbirth infanticide, him squishing around the language and saying, women just really need to trust us. I do think that's a form of toxic empathy because what you're doing is you are buying into the false premise that Democrats have set, which is that women are victims of pregnancy. They're victims of motherhood, and in order to relieve them of that victimhood, they have to be able to kill their baby. And they're ignoring the real victim in every single abortion. Sometimes the woman is a victim of something else too, say it's rape or assault or coercion, but the victim in every abortion, no matter what, is the baby. And so we're being told to be led by empathy when it comes to a subject like abortion, but only one kind of empathy, and only empathy for one person involved, and that empathy must then lead us to affirm her choice of killing her baby, which is why we shouldn't be led by empathy. We can have empathy for her, but we can't allow that to blind us to the other side of the moral equation.
Yeah.
And so instead, Christians should be led by the truth and love. The truth and love is the better approach than empathy. Empathy is just a feeling. It can't tell you what's right or wrong or true or false, but the truth and love can. Not only what is logically and morally and historically and scientifically true, but also for the Christian, what is biblically true. That's the better approach than empathy.
I've sort of mocked the little flags and posters that people have put in their yards and windows where it says, in this house, we believe Black Lives Matter, and we believe that in women's reproductive rights, and we believe you love who you love. And at the very bottom of all of those, it says, and kindness is everything.
Yeah.
It's not everything. I mean, the fruit of the Spirit I appreciate is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control. I appreciate kindness. But kindness is not niceness. Mm-hmm. Kindness is also not feeling your way into acting. Truth is everything, because kindness not built on truth is not good.
Yeah.
It actually leads people down a road. It's permissive to a point. For instance, I was talking to someone this past week, and he was telling me about his niece, who is, quote, trans. Hey, guys, I want to welcome back to the program one of our old friends, Fume. I don't know if you've heard it or not, but the flavored air category, yeah, that's a thing. It's quickly becoming a leading alternative to vaping and smoking. Yeah, it's a whole new movement towards better habits led by Fume themselves. Listen, we've all got bad habits. I've got some, you've got some, we've all got some. And let's talk about bad habits. You know, sometimes you're out with friends and they're all reaching for those bad habits and you feel the urge to not be left out, so you reach for your bad habit, or you try to borrow one of theirs. Well, what if I was to tell you there's a better alternative that will help you kick that bad habit in an enjoyable way? And it's something you can take out with you and use anywhere. Fume, it's an award-winning flavored air device. That's right, flavored air isn't like vaping. If vapor was compared to sticky soda, well, Fume cores, they're closer to like herbal teas. It actually is not bad for you. Fume has lots of delicious flavors to choose from. They got the crisp mint, the orange vanilla, the flavored air. You can satisfy your oral fixation through a passive diffusion system that utilizes no electronics, no vapor, no combustion. It's going to draw the flavor into your mouth. Fume's going to fill the void, ditching those bad habits that you have out there, and you can still have something to reach for when the time comes. It's not a vape. There's no vapor. You can use it anywhere. No nicotine. It's not addictive. Non-toxic flavors. It's a guilt-free alternative. No batteries. You don't even have to charge the thing. And guess what? If you're like me, you can fidget with it. That's right. It's going to calm the anxiety, give you something to do with your hands. It's got the magnets, got the snaps, got the clicks. Check it out. Fume continually invests in third-party studies to ensure the safety of their products, and Fume is backed by doctors in the U.S. Now, here's what I want you to do. Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you can be their next success story. For a limited time, use my code CHAD, I spell it Chad, to get a free gift with your journey pack. Head over to tryfume.com. That's tryfum.com. Use promo code Chad. You can scan the QR code there on the screen to get a free gift with your order today. That's tryfume, F-U-M, tryfume.com/Chad. Don't forget, use promo code Chad. And telling me this story of how biologically she came out and was saying, okay, I'm going to be Tyler now. And I was listening to this story, and the story was gut-wrenching, in terms of what they went through. And you find yourself wanting to be empathetic, of saying, because I can't feel what it's like to not be at home and,
in your own body.
Yeah,
right.
I hear voices sometimes in my head, but that doesn't mean I want to be somebody else.
Yeah.
That's just my own schizophrenia coming out, or the demons. I don't know, but that's my own deliverance taking place. But I can't empathetically relate to you, but I can feel the fact that this family is hurting. They're trying to do the right thing. And so I was listening to this story, and then I said, "How old is she?" And he said, 15. And they're already talking about certain transitional things and all that. And he's like, "But our biggest concern is suicide." And I said, "Okay, that sounds like kindness, but what if you biologically, anatomically surgically alter her? And when their prefrontal cortex is developed at 25, 26 years old, she says, oh, wait, that was a phase. Your empathy and your kindness led you down a place that ultimately brought you to evil. Now you're really dealing with the suicidal stuff." What are your thoughts on that? Is that the sort of thing that you mean like that? Like, I want to be nice to you. I want to care, but that care can kind of be evil.
Yes, there is a young woman named Daisy Strongen, and she was in a PragerU documentary, and she reached out to me, and she said, I'm a detransitioner. She's in her early 20s, and she said, I transitioned when I was 19. I had a lot of people in my life who affirmed my newfound identity as a man. She got a double mastectomy. She took testosterone. She somewhat looked like a man, and of course, her voice lowered. And then she started listening to right-wing content. She doesn't even know why. She was very into Reddit and Discord and Tumblr. Right. And on a lot of these forums, they were making fun of conservative thinkers. She started listening to Jordan Peterson. She somehow stumbled across Relatable. She said she would love to hate listen because she would argue with my points. But she said for some reason on gender, I just could never come up with what my argument is. Yeah. What is my counterpoint here? So eventually, and this is not at all because of me, but just the grace of God and lots of different countering voices in her life, she ended up detransitioning. She became a Christian, and now she's a mom of 2. But after the birth of her daughter, her second child, a few months ago, she posted on X, and I talked to her about it. She was like, I will never be able to breastfeed my daughter, and I will never forgive myself for that. Now, God has forgiven her, and she needs to remind herself of all of that, and her daughter will have a wonderful mother with so much experience to teach her, but she will never get that. I have 3 babies. I've not only been able to birth them, but also nurse them. And to sustain my children with my body is such a miracle and a grace of God and a gift. And it's one thing if you can't do that for whatever reason, but for a choice that you made basically as a child that was affirmed by everyone around you, the adults in your life, because they believed that, well, I'm saving my child from suicide, which is a statistical lie. It's not even true that these puberty blockers and gender affirmation, so-called, prevent suicide at all. It's just not factually true. But that's toxic empathy. Yeah. That is, feel how your child feels. And not only that, because that's one thing, that's not necessarily bad, but in your empathy, affirm their choices. Don't think about the consequences. Don't think about the other side of this. Don't even think about what's true.
Right.
It's basically what, a form of the temptation in the garden. Did God really say? Don't think about the consequences of this. Don't think about the other side of this issue. Just think, you'll be like God. You'll have the power and knowledge that he does. It's the same temptation that we're still dealing with today because Satan is a liar and the king of deception. But that's what toxic empathy is. It blinds people to morality and reality in the name of what I would call fake kindness or fake niceness.
Yeah. Feels good.
Yeah.
I think that's a bit, we've alluded to this a couple of different ways. I think people, they want to feel their way into acting rather than act their way into feeling.
Or not act at all.
That's a good point.
Empathy is, empathy as a virtue is a replacement for actually sacrificing something. Yeah. Just in the same way that socialism is a replacement for you getting off the couch and you helping those in need. You are contracting it out to others. In empathy, there's no sacrifice, no consequence on you. Because you can say, I affirm that person. Everyone will applaud you. You don't have to deal with the consequences of that person mutilating their body. You can just pat yourself on the back and virtue signal to your friends. And really, toxic empathy is narcissistic more than anything else.
Narcissistic. The book, Toxic Empathy, it comes out October 15th.
It does.
And I'm excited about it. I love knowing best-selling authors, and this is going to be a bestseller. This is. I'm just telling you. I know you're humble and all that kind of stuff, but it's going to be great.
Well, thank you.
You've got other topics. I mean, we could touch on the trans thing because that's kind of easy and in front of us, but you've got other examples that you use, the social justice. What are some of those? Yeah,
let's talk about immigration because immigration, obviously, it's a hot topic always, but especially right now. And as I was writing this book, I talk about abortion and gender and the definition of marriage and sexuality. I talk about that kind of stuff all the time. I talk about immigration, but maybe not as much as some other commentators. But so I was surprised that as I was writing this chapter, that I found myself the most incensed and the most angered by what I was actually researching and writing. In every chapter, we start with an example of this emotional manipulation that we see in the media. So, and we tell the story as if we're telling it in a compelling way. So, for example, we start in the immigration chapter and we tell a story that was told originally by the Washington Post of a woman named Maribel Diaz. She and her sickly husband and her 3 children fled a very dangerous part of Mexico for a better life in Fairfield, Ohio. They move there, they build this life. She raises her kids there for a number of years, and then she finds out that Donald Trump is going to become president, and she's very scared because she's heard that he's going to deport people. Well, he becomes president. She gets deported back to Mexico. She's separated from her kids who have to live with relatives. She doesn't know what's going to happen to her sickly husband. That's the story that the media tells you. That's the only story that the media tells you. So if you're someone who only consumes the mainstream news, that's all you're thinking about when it comes to immigration and immigration law. And you start thinking, how dare we? If I were deported, if I were separated from my kids, I can feel how she feels because I'm also a mom of 3. I can't imagine being separated from my kids. And that's a fine feeling to feel. You can feel that sympathy, you can feel that empathy. But what happens with, especially a lot of suburban women, they think, okay, I feel how she feels. That's such a horrible thing that happened to her. I've got to vote against that. I've got to vote for the guy who is against the deportations. I've got to vote for the person who is against enforcing immigration law because this is so cruel. This opposes the empathy that I feel. But then we back up and we say, okay, but here's some anecdotes that pull on your heartstrings from the other side of this issue. And we go into an equally emotionally compelling way the story of Kate Steinle, who, of course, under Kamala Harris's watch, was murdered by an illegal alien in San Francisco in 2015 because of sanctuary city empathetic policies. Her last words, dying in her dad's arms as a 32-year-old woman, were, "Help me, Daddy." She was shot in the back by this illegal alien who had committed several violent crimes and yet was shielded by these sanctuary city policies. So on both sides of this issue, we have people that demand our empathy. We've got, I wouldn't call Maribel a victim, but we've got somewhat of victims, people who have been negatively impacted in this immigration debate. So that's the problem with being led by empathy. Everyone on any side of an issue could have our empathy. The question for the Christian is not how strongly do we feel, who grabs our heartstrings more. The question for the Christian is what is true?
Yeah.
What is actually true? What is right? And so in every chapter, we look at the facts of the causes or the effects of illegal immigration. We look at its harms. We look at what it's done. But then ultimately, we just have to ask, what is true? What's the purpose of a border? Do we have a right to have a country? What does sovereignty mean? Because whether or not there are negative impacts of illegal immigration, and there are, the fact of the matter is that every country has a right to defend its borders because borders and countries were God's idea. Governments and laws were God's idea. God is a God of order. Everywhere a wall is depicted in Scripture, it's either a symbol or a literal figure of security and stability and protection. God placed Adam and Eve not in a jungle, but a garden. He is a God of order. He told us to work and to keep it. That garden, just like heaven, had its own barriers and perimeters. And so Satan, being an agent of chaos and lawlessness, loves the borderlessness and the violence and the vitriol that is caused by open border policies. So I truly believe, while there can be disagreements on the immigration issue, of course, it is a matter of Christian obligation to be for enforcing strict border and immigration law.
Yeah. See, that's the beauty of the way you communicate, and whether it's a social media post or on Relatable or in your books, is you build a logical case. It's hard to defeat. Like you said, the woman that's detransitioned, and she was like, I wanted to argue with you, but I couldn't find an argument that was, and that's a gift, Allie. I mean, that is a true gift. You do a great job with that. Because, I find myself perusing through social media every now and then, and I'll run across one of your posts, and I'll be like, yeah, I wish I could think like that. That's a pretty deep thought right there. I tend to just be a little more punchy, but I'm like, no, that was actually a really good logical thought. And I'm appreciative of that voice because, you have done a fantastic job of taking the pointed and poignant aspects of what we're dealing with on a practical level. Every day, people are looking at this. I mean, when the director of ICE comes out and says, look, there's 663,000 people that are loose in this country who are convicted criminals elsewhere.
Rapists,
13,000
murderers.
of those are homicide. 15 to 16,000 rapists. 1,865 of them are awaiting convictions. They're out there. They're among us. We know the stories, the Lincoln Rileys, the various others, the young 12-year-old girl in Houston. Horror stories.
Yep.
This is the real world where people live. And as a father of 3 daughters, they're out there. They're adults. They're doing their life. They're out from under the nest, the wing, so to speak. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to walk in fear. I'm not going to do that. But this is a real situation. You do a great job of taking those and saying, okay, this is what's reality. This is what's going on in our world. This is the biblical worldview of how you should be looking at this. This is the faith response to it. But it's also the logical response to it. And so I'm excited. I don't want to talk too much about the book because I want people to read the book.
Yeah.
And do you think in reading that it's a tool that will arm people for their conversations?
That's it. That's exactly what I want. One of my favorite messages that I got after the conference that we put on, there were a lot of sweet messages, but the general consensus was summed up by this. This person said, I walked out of there with zero fear of man. And that's what I want also after people read this book, that you are able to not only be confident, but also be confident because you are armed with knowledge. I think that's a lot of where confidence comes from. Of course, it comes from knowing who you are in Christ and all of that for the Christian, but knowing your stuff, knowing your arguments. I have done a lot of debates with a lot of liberals, whether it's liberals in Congress or just liberal commentators and things like that. And I'm not trying to be rude, but I am always stunned by how little they actually know.
Fascinating.
Isn't it fascinating?
Yeah.
We have to be told all the time what they think. We see it in all forms of entertainment, everything that we read. We have to actively dodge it and avoid it. Even when we're on a walk in our neighborhood, we see their mantras, their dogmas posted in their yard. And they never have to really interact with our arguments. And I've just, I had a debate on a podcast with a guy who identifies as so-called non-binary, and he's a teacher. His name is Desmond, and he's a really nice guy. He went to Johns Hopkins. He studied, I don't even know, human sexuality or something. And we're just talking about the basics of the biology of the human body and the gender binary and stuff. Yeah. And as I'm saying things that you and I say, duh. Most of the world says, duh. Of course, how do you not know that? How do you not know about that study? How do you not know about this fact? I mean, his mind was blown. He had never heard some of the things that I said. And so just know that when you're going into these conversations, of course, be humble. Of course, over-prepare. But if you have the facts, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be the most eloquent person. But if you've got the facts, the biblical arguments, the logical, historical, scientific arguments on your side, you will be able to persuade people. Not everyone. Some people are so in their ideological camp, they don't care.
And I think if you can separate, to use your term, if you can separate truth from the, quote, empathy, because they're feeling, if you can come with facts and don't chase their rabbits.
Yeah.
Because they want to distract.
Totally.
Something Donald Trump did a horrible job of in the last debate with Kamala, in my opinion, was she got under his skin.
Every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She got under his skin with the personal stuff. People are leaving your rallies and, that.
Yeah.
Whether that's true or not, let it go.
Yeah. It's so true, especially when it comes to something like abortion. I always get questions of what do I say about this? What do I say about this? And you saw Tim Walz do it. He did it last night when J.D. Vance brought up Tim Walz and Kamala Harris supporting 9-month abortions, which they 100% do. Their record shows that. That's not just something we're making up. Tim Walz started talking about miscarriages. What are you even talking about? That's not what we're talking about. That doesn't even actually have to do with pro-life laws. It's not affected by pro-life laws at all. Yeah. And so I say, when you're talking about abortion specifically, you bring it back to the baby. Every time. Make them answer why they think killing some innocent humans is okay. Always go back to that question. No matter what rabbit they try to get you to chase, go back to that question, because at the end of the day, the pro-choice side believes that some babies don't have a right to life, and it's based on this very arbitrary standard of being wanted or not. And that is a horribly barbaric standard to have for human worth.
And they're always going to use the worst scenario. If your daughter was raped, they always are going to do that. If your 12-year-old daughter was raped by, they're going to take the worst possible scenario and try to put you off on that.
Death penalty for the rapist, not for the baby.
Exactly. Two wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah.
Murder, the guilt of murder on top of the shame of rape, it's not going to make you feel better.
Yeah.
It's just going to add more to the shame.
And you're punishing the baby for the sins of the rapist.
Right.
Which is disordered justice. That's not justice at all. And these are the same people, by the way, who, that the man that was just recently executed for the horrific murder that he committed, you had a lot of progressives coming out and saying, this is horrible. I can't believe that we're still executing people, even though it looks to me from what I saw that he absolutely committed this murder. But these are the same people who celebrate abortion, but the chemical combination that is used in lethal injection is the exact same chemical combination that is used in second trimester abortions. And so we celebrate the death penalty for babies who have never done anything wrong, and we lament the death penalty for our most vicious murders. That's a spiritual problem.
Yeah. And I truly believe after however many 75 million abortions, murders, since the passage of Roe v. Wade, 1972, that cry of the blood of those innocents, it does reach the altar of God, and you can't continue with that mindset. I mean, you have a political party right now that their only thing they're running on is, what was it Kamala said? My grandmother went from village to village in India with bullhorns, and she was on the bullhorn, and she was always preaching about women's reproductive rights. I mean, that's one. Not true.
She's such an odd person. Just such an odd person.
Yeah, that your grandmother, I mean, she's running on this. My grandmother took a bullhorn from village to village in India preaching about women's reproductive rights. So that's a euphemism for murder. That's abortion is in their term. I don't think that happened.
It probably happened in the same way that it definitely happened that Tim Walz was in China for
Tiananmen Square.
Tiananmen Square, yeah. That was funny.
Or she worked at McDonald's. So they probably have the same modicum of truth in regards to that.
Yeah.
But the fact that these are the stories they come up with and they pat themselves on the back, it's like, this is sick.
Yeah.
That is really like your hill to die on. Mm-hmm. They are pushing that more than anything else. And apparently it's effective. If we trust the polls, I don't even trust the polls anymore. You know where I go? I go to betonline.ag and I look at the betting odds.
Do you?
Have a whole political category.
Oh, no, I haven't seen any of this.
I don't think you would be there, Allie, but what I'll do is I'll go in there. I've started discovering these places like BetOnline, and I'll go in there and I'll look at what the odds are.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think this is more accurate than the polls.
What are the odds?
Well, I like after the debate, Kamala went up in terms of her favorability, the betting odds in Vegas for her to win.
Yeah.
Now I think they've leveled back out a little bit. But they have weird categories like, will they shake hands at the debate? Will they wear a red tie? I mean, who'll take the first drink of water? It's dumb. But if you look at the overarching thing, I'm like, I think I trust this more than the polls.
Yeah, I don't know. Win this. It's hard. It's hard to know who to trust. But I do think Trump is doing his campaign there. I was worried right after Kamala announced. For those 3 weeks after she announced, I was like, I think they gave up. I think it's better. They're doing better. I thought J.D. Vance did a better job of formulating Trump's policy proposals than Trump did, actually. So I think it's going to be neck and neck, which is really amazing when you think about whether it's toxic empathy or just straight up lying, propaganda, suppression, censorship, the George Soros buying up the radio stations, the mainstream media, academia, all of the different institutions, global and national, that they have to determine the fate of this election. I'm not even talking about illegal stuff. I'm just talking about perfectly legal stuff that they are doing to try to change our minds. The fact that it is neck and neck right now, even in the most liberal polls, that's something.
It really is. And I was going to bring up, and we can go to that, but these suburban white women, which apparently, if you believe the polls, their messaging is effective.
Yeah.
Because they don't want the Playboy Donald Trump. the philanderer Donald Trump, right? They don't want that guy who
They want philanderer Kamala Harris.
They want Kamala Harris
and her husband who
apparently
did the nanny. And there's either a love child out there or she had an abortion, and no one's interested in pushing on that.
Nobody's asking that question. And now the news story came out that I saw this morning. I posted it about him after a gala. He slapped his girlfriend.
Gosh, I have not seen that.
So apparently old Doug, who a couple of days ago by Jen Psaki on MSNBC, she said he is the basically redefined
masculinity.
Yeah, he reinvented masculinity, Doug Emhoff. The level of beta energy when he and Beto O'Rourke, Robert Francis O'Rourke, went into that. You see the clip where they go into the Whataburger in Texas?
No.
And they're in
Is
there
this
ordering.
recent?
Yeah, it's like last week.
Okay.
So he made a little Texas swing through, and he was with Robert Francis, and they go into a Whataburger, and they made this whole commercial clip about what he's ordering. It's ridiculously cringe.
Of course it is.
It's horrible.
You know, him and Tim Walz, we've been sold, and you talk about, masculinity and stuff a lot, but obviously we've been sold through the through TV shows, through entertainment, through movies for decades. The dumb, weak dad. And we've got Tim Walz, who I think perfectly encapsulates that. He called himself a knucklehead at the debate, and he thought that was actually a good strategy. It actually might be for the suburban women because, the male figure has been so emasculated in our entertainment for so long that the only form of masculinity that a lot of women are comfortable with is the feminine kind.
So I go back to my what I referenced earlier about happening upon a Me Too rally, and you had the women. They were large and in charge. They were walking. They had their hats on. Some of them were dressed in costumes, and they always had their significant other. I don't know if it's a husband, a boyfriend, or whatever beta level lack of testosterone was walking behind them, but they were always walking behind them.
Yeah.
Like, you slay queen, you do your thing. I'm going to stay back here, be subservient. And you could tell these guys were kind of badgered. I mean, I was just watching them.
Yeah.
And you could see. So it sort of plays into that role. I remember Fox News had me on years ago, and I made them mad. I really did make...
Was that the last time you were on? I haven't been on Fox in years and years
I think it was
either.
the last time, actually. I was actually in New York. I was on the curvy couch, and Steve Ducey... He got real nervous because they were doing a thing, and I used to be on like Fox and Friends every week. You know, you probably were too.
I was too. Then it stopped.
And it ended. I didn't know if it was a Blaze thing or me just pissing people off. I didn't know, but I didn't care.
Doesn't matter.
Because I didn't want to get up at 3:30 in the morning anyway and go do all that stuff. But I was on the curvy couch there, and they were doing a thing that Vanity Fair was running. It was a new TV show, and it was like the rise of the beta male. And these guys were standing there. It was the cast from the show. I don't know what the show was, but they had their hands in each other's pockets, like reaching forward in their hands.
I remember that, but I can't remember what it's from.
And it was like four guys, and they're standing behind each other, and their hands are in each other's pockets. And so we talked about beta masculinity versus, alpha and toxic and all the terms. And then they played a clip from Rachel Maddow. And I said, well, speaking of masculinity.
I mean, they couldn't have invited you on and thought you'd say anything different.
Don't have me on.
Yeah.
Of all people. And Steve was like, "Oh well, we need to cut." And I was like, I could tell it made him nervous because I said Rachel Maddow was masculine. She is.
Well, but that's what she wants to be.
She wants to be that.
Of course, that's how she dresses.
Yeah. I mean, her haircut, the whole thing.
She would probably say thank you.
If you go back and look at her high school yearbook pictures, she was a feminine, attractive woman, I guess. If compared to what she is now, at least she was trying to be feminine. Now it's not any of that at all. So I bring that up to say, I want your opinion on this. So all of that tied together, I used to tell my girls when they were growing up, I was like, you're not going to grow up and be Disney princesses. Like we can go to Disney World. This was back before we knew how evil Disney was. And my second daughter, she actually did grow up to be a Disney princess. She's with Disney's Frozen on Ice. She's Elsa.
Really?
Yeah. So
I did not know that.
So she tours all over the country in Canada. She actually works for Disney. She's still a girl.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Well, when she called me, she graduated from Troy University, South Alabama, with a degree in dance of all things. A degree in dance. She called me. She said, "I'm gonna major in this, or else I'm not going to school." They paid for her education, the whole thing. She's gifted. And a lot of jokes come from that when I say my daughter's a professional dancer, and men are like, "Oh, okay," and I'm like, "Oh, stop." So she went up to New York, tried out for the Rockettes. That's pretty nepotistic up there. Then she went to Atlanta, went to Orlando, and they wound up putting her in, and she's Disney's Frozen on Ice.
Yeah.
So she's toured now with them for 3 years. And I told her when she told me that, I said, let's talk about ideologies. Let's talk about what you're probably going to be exposed to a little bit. And she's kept her head about her, which has been fantastic. All of my kids have gone, my 4 kids have all gone through college. They've all done it on purpose. We weren't going to fund bad ideologies. And if they came home with that nonsense, they were going to come out of school real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. So they did well. And they went to school on purpose. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone. But I say that to say, for the longest time, I think girls were misled in thinking that, okay, I'm Barbie. I get the car, I get the house, I get the guy, I get the clothes, I get the wardrobe, I get all the stuff, I get the little dog, I get the whole thing. I get all the furniture, all the accoutrements that go on with being what Mattel interprets as being a woman, or what Disney interprets being a princess. Is that still problematic in terms of a female's expectation growing up, or has the progressive left totally eradicated that fairy tale in exchange for you're going to be tough, strong, masculine, career-oriented, goal-oriented? And again, I mean that in terms of a out-in-the-world goal-oriented sort of thing versus, hey, I'm a woman, and it's okay to just be a woman.
Yeah.
And have dignity in that and what I'm created to be.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm sure there are still remnants of, like, if you want to call it Barbie ideology or Barbie brainwashing of, standards, unrealistic standards of perfection or materialism and entitlement or, the lies, you're perfect the way that you are and all of that stuff, you're enough, and that kind of pseudo psychological babble that a lot of women are coddled with to our great detriment. So that's certainly there, but I would say it's certainly more a push for androgyny, a push to not even be a girl boss, but to misdirect your motherhood instincts into your dog, into your plants, into your job, but also into these victims that the media has told you that you should be protecting. I think that's a huge reason why a lot of suburban women vote Democrat. It's not just toxic empathy, it's misdirected motherhood. All of us playing with those Barbies, playing with those dolls. I also have 3 daughters. I've got lots of nephews too. So I see the differences when my girls have anything. If they have 3 rocks, 3 sticks, 3 blades of grass, it's mommy, daddy, baby. I didn't teach them that. Everything turns into a family. Everything turns into a home. Everything turns into a baby. They're constantly taking care of things, whereas my nephews, everything turns into a gun. And it's like, who taught them that? But that doesn't go away. Just because we've created this world in which women are told freeze your eggs and pursue your career for your 20s and half of your 30s and have kids later doesn't mean that mothering instinct goes away. It's just going to be directed to something else. I also think that's part of the reason why you've got so much anxiety and depression among a lot of middle-aged white women, because that instinct that you have to mother was directed towards the wrong things. And anytime we direct our desires towards the thing that's not going to fulfill it, there's going to be this gap that's filled with disappointment and anxiety. And so I just psychoanalyzed a lot of people. And I know that's a generalization.
That's fair, though.
I know it's a generalization, but look, I mean, every woman has a baby. It just might not be a human baby.
That's a great concept, though. I mean, psychologically, that's a great diagnosis.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody the other day. Can't remember who it was. And we got into this debate about men being pregnant, which, whatever. And I said, well, here's the thing. You can artificially put a child into a belly, right? And whatever that looks like. That man, I don't even care. I don't care what he's done to himself physically, physiologically. He'll never feel that quickening. He'll never know that thing. I don't know what it is with you women, but there's that thing.
Yeah.
You're pregnant, and then all of a sudden one day you're like, I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
And I think that estrogen kicks in, and it's like, okay, I'll kill you. Like I will kill you if you mess with me or my baby. I was like, this is about that life inside of me, and it takes preeminence over all things. Men can't feel that.
Nope.
Now, we joke about it. I don't have any grandchildren, but I was talking to my buddy, country music singer Mark Wills. We were together, and he said he had a grandbaby, and he said, when your child is born, you're like, I die for this person. He goes, but when your grandbaby is born, I'll kill you over this person.
Yeah.
Like it becomes a different thing. That's how men are. Women are like the mama bear.
Yeah.
Men can't feel that.
Yeah.
Men
I mean,
can't
it's
feel
protective, but it's just different. And we feel it earlier because we feel it when our baby is in the womb. And yes, of course, husbands are protective of their pregnant wives, of course, and they love their baby inside the womb and their wives. But you're right, it is different. I mean, if anyone has ever messed with a baby animal when the mom is around, whether you're talking about a cat or whether you're talking about a bear or a goose, like you can see it. You can see the anger, and it's so true. And it's just even more when they lay that baby on your chest and you know that you would die 1,000 deaths just to make this little person that you just met earthside whole. And I remember when my first was born and they wouldn't give her to me because they said, we got to regulate her breathing. It's not right. We might need to take her to the NICU. And I was just like, give me my baby.
Yeah.
And they did. And the NICU guy came and he came with the little plastic bassinet to wheel her away. They were like, sorry, but we got to take her. We got to fix her. And I said, just check her breathing one more time.
Yeah.
And they checked her and it was perfect. She just needed a mom. And I'm not saying every time that's the case, but moms are so necessary and no man will ever feel that. And I'm not just talking about in transgenderism. I'm talking about the two men that rent the womb and buy the eggs to try to raise a motherless child. You are robbing that child of what
and
God
you've been
need.
outspoken about that. I've been outspoken about that. It's become a mainstream thing.
Yeah.
We know people who have done that.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to say like, look, buddy, I love you, but no. Like you are, because ultimately you're robbing that child. And so
you're forcing a child to sacrifice on behalf of your own wants. And that's never how it should be.
It's a selfish move. It's a selfish move. I said it. Allie didn't say it. I said it. But it's a selfish move. And I've had a lot of those conversations because these things matter. You go back to, and you alluded to it, I was watching one of your reels, one of your clips the other day from your Share the Arrows conference, and you were talking about those mandates in the book of Genesis, because that hasn't changed. God, the fall happened, and suddenly God was the first deporter. He put them out of the garden and said, okay, you guys have to.
Never heard it like that. I like that.
He deported them. I mean, he had to get, I had never thought about it till you said something earlier, but he was the one who deported them first. But the mandate didn't change.
He also deported Satan from heaven.
He deported Satan. He deported Cain and sent him out into the land of Nod.
Yeah.
Said, I'm going to put a mark on you, but but you're still gone.
Yeah.
And so he deported Israel. I mean, he sent both Israel and Judah into
exile.
Into exile. And then the thing that Jesus kept referring to was that wall. He's like, there's not going to be one stone on top of another one. You guys have all this pride in this wall that Nehemiah built.
Yeah.
It's going to go away in 70 AD. It did. But so again, we could do those biblical examples about deportations and walls and who's immigrants and blah, 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 blah. The sojourner and the refugee. But the mandate was, hey, be fruitful and multiply. I've given you this garden. You're going to tend it. You're going to keep it. The curse was, okay, for the woman, your desire is going to be for the man in his position. You're going to have the pain of childbirth. You're going to have all these womanly things that, oh God, I don't know how I don't know. I never want to be a woman. I don't know how anybody says, I want to be a woman.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's more fun when you can claim that you're a woman, but you don't have to have a period.
You don't have to have all the stuff that goes with it. I don't know how y'all deal with this stuff. But I'm sitting there going, but when he told Adam, he said, listen, you're going to work. Work is not a product of the curse.
So true.
It was the roots and the thistles and the ground being hard.
Exactly.
That was the part, by the sweat of your brow.
Yeah.
It's so, but the mandate is still there.
Yeah.
We've lost the mandate. And I think if you get back into God's way of doing things that are mandated, if you get in the kingdom, that dome of the king, that government of God, the way he does things, boy, there's a rhythm of life that sure does lead to, as you said earlier, God's not the chaotic one. Mm-hmm. He wants to bring order and peace. Mm-hmm. How do we in this day and age, as parents, as people who have an opportunity to speak into other people's lives, which is a humbling task and a very humbling platform that God's given both of us in regards to that. How do we look at this culture that has no discipline?
Yeah.
They are chaotic. I say all the time about, we've raised our kids with PlayStations and Amazon.com, mm-hmm. and we haven't allowed the consequences that are meant for our kids to hit them.
Yeah.
We take them.
So true.
We take the blows rather than them.
Yeah.
How do we change that? Because again, I want to be empathetic towards my kids. I don't want them to be latchkey. I don't want them to hear the word no like I did. I don't want them to feel pain.
Yeah.
But we're raising a really weak generation.
I've found, and I'm not saying that I'm the parenting expert because my oldest is 5, got 5, 3, and 1-year-old. So I'm still kind of in the newness of motherhood in a lot of ways. But I remember someone told me, and this has just been so true in my experience, that typically the harder thing to do as the parent is the right thing to do. It's easier to give the iPad. It's easier to let them keep watching TV. It's easier to let them scream at you and yell at you and get up from the table and to be disrespectful. The harder thing to do is discipline. The harder thing to do is disappoint them. The harder thing to do is to be consistent in the boundaries that we put in place. It's always going to be easier in the moment to give them what they want. Yeah. But by raising unruly children, you are raising them to be eventually irresponsible adults. I heard Jordan Peterson say, raise children that one day people will like, that grow to be people who other people like. And that's not to mean that they're winning popularity contests. That just means they're responsible, productive, courteous, kind people in the true sense of kind. And you have to do that. And, my husband and I are still learning this. You have to do that through setting boundaries and making them hard workers. And there's a balance between allowing them to experience the consequences of their actions and shielding them from some things, especially when they're so young. And, like I said, my husband and I are still learning how to do that. But I'm thankful that I had parents that didn't allow me to push them around when I was the teenager, telling them that having a curfew was ridiculous, that none of my friends had rules, that they should just trust me. I was protected from so much by being home at 11 o'clock on the weekends. And so I try to remember that even in these little years.
Yeah. Those boundaries are good.
Yeah.
Whether it's a nation's borders or moral boundaries, they're good.
Exactly.
The 10 Commandments are actually there for your protetion and your blessing.
Yeah. God disciplines those he loves.
He loves.
Yeah.
I mean, Hebrews 12 is so clear with that. And it's like sometimes if I know I'm like walking the wrong way and I'm not being disciplined, I'm like, God,
do you still love me?
Can you smack me around a little bit?
Yeah.
You're super busy, and I appreciate your time. We were technically studio neighbors. We were right next to each other.
We were
over there.
We were, and I got to see your little dogs.
I know. I was always.
And now I just have to deal with robot dogs.
Yeah, now you got robot dogs. I used to bring the real dogs in, then they'd get mad at me because the dog would pee in the floor somewhere.
Yeah, that would happen sometimes.
It does happen. They're learning. Thank you for the time, though.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was great.
The book is Toxic Empathy. Comes out October 15th. I know that there are those of you who say, well, I'll wait on the audio book. Don't do that. Get the real book because they can cancel the audio. Are you doing an audio?
True. Yes, we've done the audio. It's me reading it, but it does.
Hard to do.
Yeah, it does help a lot. If I know that Amazon, we don't love Amazon, but maybe a redemptive way to use Amazon is to buy this book because they take the highest shares of your book by far.
Sure.
And the more pre-orders I get, the more they will order. And we don't want Amazon to run out because then it's out of stock and people can't buy it and all of that. So, but you can go to toxicempathy.com. If you don't want to buy from Amazon, that's totally fine. There are other places that sell it too.
Yeah, well, I'm excited about it.
Thank you.
I always encourage people to get the book and the audio and do them together.
Sure, there you go.
It's a good way to
really learn it.
Really get it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Allie Stuckey, her show is Relatable. You can find it wherever podcasts are offered. You can see her on Blaze TV. You can find her in all the spots. You search and you will find. I promise you. Don't be lazy. Just type her name in there, and she will pop up. Thank you.
Thank you.
For those of you who want to find me out on the road, no algorithms, no filters, just a little chicken wire between me and the live audience sometimes, depending on the places where I am. Go to watchchad.com. That's where all the fun stuff is. And just check me out at WatchChad on Instagram as well as on X, where we are doing everything we can to try to punch through the smoke a little bit, make you think, make you laugh. I don't know. Stir the pot a little bit. I don't know if God's pleased with me or not, but here we are. This is what we're doing. So thank you, guys. Share the podcast. Share the episode. Make sure your friends and your family know about it as well. And in the meantime, we'll get geared up for the next conversation. We love you. God bless you. Talk to you then. Bye.